What's up, folks? I'm Mitch with Stone Coat Countertops, and we've got a special treat in store for you. I'm redoing this firehouse's table. They have a big conference table they sit around and share meals at after a hard day's work, and it was in dire need of an upgrade. So I headed down to SAC. I met with my buddy Scott. I played high school football with him. He's now a full-time firefighter, been doing it for years. And he hit me up. He said, Mitch, we need a new table, man. Can you help us out? I headed down to SAC. I picked up these two beautiful Redwood slabs. Redwood from California is amazing. This stuff smells so good when you work with it. It's water and bug resistant. We're going to use our slab leveling jig, which is a tool we've invented to level twisted, unlevel woodworking projects quickly, efficiently, and for way less cost than running this slab across town to a cabinet shop or a slab mill to level this table. Guys, you're going to want to stick to the end of this video. The fire crew gets back from one of their calls and we surprise them with this table. It's really, really cool. All right, let's get to work. Now, to begin your project, you need to cut your slabs to your overall dimension, knowing how wide you're going to make that river. Next, because our table is so thick, I'm going to add a couple build-up strips. That raises my slab leveling jig higher to accommodate the thicker slab. These are some pretty thick jumbo slabs of Redwood, so I added my strips. I cut the overall dimension. I'm going a little wide. I'm going to pour my river, and then I'm going to come back and square off my table, cut the final dimension. But whenever I'm pouring my epoxy river tables, I am pouring them a little bit wide. These are stop blocks. That way, I don't have my slab jig come off the table when I'm routering close to me. We designed and developed this slab jig for the do-it-yourselfer, the woodworker who wants to get the job done quick. Here I start out by leveling the bottom of my project only. No need to do the top, because once we connect the two slabs together with our casting epoxy, we'll then level that table as one unit altogether. So when you level the bottom, that table can sit nice and tight to your form with less epoxy leaking underneath that. So step one, make sure your slabs are going to fit under your slab jig, and then quickly level out the bottom. And be sure to wear any safety gear, your PPE. You're going to want to wear your eyes, your ears, and your mask whenever sanding wood or sanding epoxy. You don't want to breathe that stuff. And you're only going to want to take off about an 1/8 inch at a time. And that also depends, guys, on the species of wood you're going with. If you've got a black walnut, that stuff is hard. So in that case, you're going to take off a little bit less. You'll know how much to take off by how much that, the router is binding down. It'll really start working hard. That way let's take a little bit off. Just walk that router back up. And here you could see I use the hold your breath dust mask technique. I would not recommend that. Grab a dust mask, folks. You don't want to be breathing dust. Do as I say, not as I do. And as I was saying how I only router the bottom side, one of my slabs was a little bit thicker, so I went ahead and routered that down just to kind of match that, so I saved some time later. Now here I am getting rid of a big old boo-boo. So whatever piece of equipment was moving these pieces of redwood when they fell them out in the woods, took a big chunk off of here. So I'm going to make that look a little bit better, a little more organic, and not look like a piece of equipment hurt it. So here I'm just using a cut saw disc. You could pick these up on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description below. And while you're watching me grind away at this slab, if you're enjoying this video, if you enjoy the content we provide for you, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. That really helps us grow. It helps us provide more and more content for your viewing pleasures. And as you enjoy me grinding away on this slab, let's talk about the difference between supercast and casting resin. So supercast is designed for the thicker pours. It has a slower cure, meaning it's going to stay liquid longer in small masses. It's designed for the bigger, thicker pours requiring more volume. If you're only pouring about 1 inch of thickness, you're going to want to choose our casting resin. That's going to dry a little bit quicker. You're not going to have to wait around on those thinner pours. If you're going to pour casting resin at 1 inch thick, it's going to dry about 18 to 26 hours. If I were to pour supercast at 1 inch thick, that's going to take about 28 to 36 hours to dry. But if I were to pour supercast at 2 inches thick, now we're talking that same 15 to 24 hour dry time. You can move on to the next step. But I also like to leave my woodworking projects in the casting form for probably 5 to 7 days to allow that casting resin to cure really well before I pop it on out. All right, here I go again using the hold your breath dust technique. Please don't use that. I'm going to get in trouble. OSHA's going to rip me. Good job, Nate. You got your mask on. I don't. Nate cares about his lungs. Care about your lungs, guys. Wear a dust mask. This white sheet I am connecting down to my slab jig table is a piece of melamine. It's nice and smooth. It's a good surface to apply your Tyvek tape to, or some folks like to use the mold release spray on that. I'm not the biggest fan of that. Why? Because wow, that was cool. I spray my mold release. That stuff goes everywhere. It's landed on projects that I've then went to clear coat on, and they don't clear coat, man. You're going to fisheye. So really be careful with the mold release spray. Have a dedicated room or area that you could spray that without it letting contaminate any other boards or epoxy projects that you want to put epoxy on. Silicone and epoxy do not mix. So I am dry fitting my form boards. You want to create those taller than your slab, because I'm going to put my casting resin all the way up to the brim. And if I overfill it, I don't want it to overfill my form. It's okay if some comes on top of my table. After this cures, I will then come back and level the whole table as one. This is an important step, guys. Don't rely just on your form boards. You need to use a latex caulking and ensure that it's all the way dry before moving on to the next step, which is pouring your casting or supercast epoxy. The next step is a pretty cool pro tip. I like to take quick coat. I'll mix up just enough to completely coat my slabs. I'm going to put a nice coating on the bottom, and then I'm going to apply my slabs into the form and let that quick coat all dry. I'll just roll it on there, because what this does, this connects my slabs to the bottom of my form without having to put weights, without having to, screw down something to keep my slabs from floating, because they will float. You'll pour in your casting resin and your two slabs will float up to the surface. You'll keep pouring, going, where's it going? It's going underneath the slab, folks. So use some quick coat, apply it to the top and bottom if you wish, and then you're off to the races. I don't really coat the edges all the way because I want that supercast to penetrate into those edges and create a very, very good bond where the epoxy meets the woodworking. Guys, how do I know how much casting resin to apply to my river? That's kind of a simple process. We have a volume calculator under the resources tab on our website. You're going to measure the length and average width and depth of the river you want to create, and put all those dimensions right into our calculator, and it tells you exactly how many gallons of supercast or casting resin you're going to need. And of course, the customer goes with the Blue River. I mean, they're the most popular. I'm tired of making blue rivers, but they look so good with Redwood or Black Walnut. I couldn't just do a Crater Lake Blue River again. I had to mix it up. Without the customer's knowledge, I added in a little black to my river. That darkened down this Crater Lake and added some really cool features. All right, here comes the good stuff. I love pouring casting resin into forms. Ooh la la. That is so cool. I like to pour a little bit at a time. Let that kind of, wow, that's cool. Let it do its thing, and then I'll come and torch the air out of that product before I come and pour some more in. You can see I've gotten rid of the air. The supercast and casting resin is designed to off-gas naturally, but adding a little bit of a heat source on top, just like with the countertop epoxy, will speed up removing the air bubbles. You can see those air bubbles floating. That is all from mixing, guys. And that being said, when I'm mixing up the supercast or countertop epoxy, any epoxy, I put my paddle mixer to the bottom and keep it there. You don't need to pull it up and down, up and down. All you're going to do is bring in a bunch more air than necessary. Here I am using that heat source to remove the air bubbles. This river is going to be about 3 inches thick, so I cannot pour this whole river in one go. I'm going to pour about half, and then I'll let it cure, and then I'll come back and pour the other half. And that's all dependent on volume, folks. If this was a 2-inch wide river rather than, 18 to 20 inches at some spots, I could pour deeper. I could go deeper. It's the volume. You're fighting the exothermic reaction, and what that is a bunch of heat produced as the epoxy cures, and that is dependent on the volume used. Here I'm taking some supercast and going into my knots. I want to turn those blue, and voila, here comes the black. Oof, this was cool. I really darkened it up though, so I just poured a big ribbon of black in the middle, and then I take my stick and start going to town. Ooh, that is so pretty. I wish it stayed like that. I over melded kind of. Oh my gosh. So playing with color combos, guys, with our mica powders really opens up how many colors you really have in our system. You can combine 2 to 3 mica colors in a river and get a real custom pretty look. I think this was my last pour. We're going to let this cure overnight. Actually, I think I let it cure a couple days. I don't remember. I do so many of these things. Wow, look, it's cured. That was awesome and fast. The supercast will kind of do its own thing once it starts to set off. That was like pillowing and like clouds of resin. That's when that heat was generated. It almost moves it and gets a life of its own. It's really cool to watch. I've seen it on the time lapse. Ooh la la. So I'm going to try to replicate and mimic the same color. I sent a picture to my buddy Scott down in Sac, the firefighter. The consensus was it's a little too dark because I surprised him with that black. But no big deal. I just kept this top with a little less black. There I am mixing the black. Here I am pouring the black. Thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate every viewer we have. So let us know where you're watching. And if you made it this far, I want to reward you by answering your questions directly. I will hop in the comments of this video and answer any woodworking or epoxy question that you have. Start out your question with, "Hey Mitch," ask the question, and I'll hop in the comments and respond to you personally. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ooh, that's thick. That is thick. All right, I'm knocking off my form boards. Pull out all your screws, and then just use a hammer and pop out any of those form boards. Here I'm taking down some of the overfilled blue that I poured in those knots, and then coming back, wearing my mask, good job, Mitch, and leveling down the table as one unit. I'll do my passes over and over again until I get this bad boy perfectly level. Now I'm going to work up the sanding. I start out with probably 60 grit, 120, 220, and now let's cut our piece. Remember, I had my table a little oversized, and I'm going to have to do this a little bit hokey here. I do not have the luxury of having a beautiful Festool track saw, so I made my own with some clamps and 2 8-foot levels, baby. Where there's a will, there is a way. You don't need any fancy equipment to get these jobs done. I finished up the table prep by rounding over the top and bottom with an 1/8 inch round over, then sanding the top and sides up to 220 grit. To properly apply epoxy to woodworking, live edge slabs like you're watching, we're going to seal coat 3 times and then flood coat once. What is a seal coat? A seal coat is a thin 1 ounce per square foot coating of either art coat or countertop epoxy. A flood coat is a 3 ounce per square foot coating of either art coat or countertop epoxy. So we're going to do 3 seal coats, nice and thin, and we're going to allow the air, holy cow, that is pretty. We're going to allow the air to naturally off-gas into the thinner layer of epoxy. So we'll remove all the air that we incorporated into this material with a blowtorch. You can also use a heat gun. And then we're going to come back and there's going to be tons of air bubbles in this thin coating. And what that is air off-gassing out of the wood as the epoxy penetrates deep into the open pores, creating a tenacious bond. So do your seal coats first, followed by a 3 ounce per square foot flood coat. We have a square footage calculator on our website as well, but it's really easy. If you're measuring in feet, multiply length times width. That gives you your square footage. If you're measuring in inches, same thing, length times width, but divide by 144. That spits out your square footage. For your seal coats, multiply by 1. For your flood coat, multiply by 3. You're gonna know you're done with your seal coats when you come back after the seal coat the next day and it's perfectly smooth. When you come back and you have craters, you've got big old dome bubbles. That's off-gassing. That's what you're seeing right here. We're going to sand that cratered back down flat. We're going to sand any bubble open and apply another thin 1 ounce per square foot. When you come back and it looks nice and glossy, you're ready for the flood coat, which is what I am applying right now. I went ahead and applied 3 seal coats already, and I saved you...
My mama said I was born on the wild side.
Sorry about that. I must have been listening to that on the ride into work. So we saved you from watching me squeegee out multiple coats. This is your...
I actually love putting a clear coat on countertops as well. There's something like, it's like a clear Terminator 2 villain. Remember when he gets liquefied?
Oh boy, sorry about that, folks. That's pretty cool though. Corporate, I do not know how the Terminator 2 story helps us sell epoxy, but I got sidetracked. I forgot what I was saying. I got mesmerized. Nice shots. Guys, like the video, share it with your friends. That helps us grow, and if you haven't, you better subscribe. We got some amazing stuff coming out. Okay, I remembered what I was talking about. Flood coats, 3 ounces per square foot. We're going to use an 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch square notch trowel. That evenly spreads the material. It also, mixes that material one more time as those teeth glide through the epoxy. Make sure to rub your edges with your gloved hands so an even flow happens as the material levels. And then we're going to chop the top. I'm chopping the top with my gloved hands today. I was out of chop brushes, believe it or not.
You'll also be able to feel any puddles of resin that you may haven't spread evenly, which I'm quite even. You're naughty. You're a naughty little table. And then I take my little table and I go. This will be a cool time lapse. I guess I didn't need you patty caking after all, bro.
Next step here after chopping that top to remove the trowel lines is we're going to remove the air with a propane torch. You could also use a heat gun, but the propane torch works best. Ooh la la, look at that bad boy. All right, for best curing options, I'm going to have my room at about 70 degrees, 70 to 75. I'm going to turn off the lights. The lights leave a reflection like you're seeing there. The bugs fly into the reflection, and then they're Jurassic Park themselves into your tabletop. You can sand them out the next day, but you're going to have to do another flood coat. So kill the lights, turn off the AC, have it around 71 degrees or so. If you have to put a heater on, put it down on the floor so it's not blowing across. And then we're going to let this cure overnight. The next step will be the ultimate top coat. Grab an angle grinder, grab a metal fiber sanding disc, 80 grit, remove the drips. Follow that up with 220 to smooth out any rough scratches. I left a link in the description to a landing page all about the ultimate top coat. The steps are pretty simple, but require a little bit of practice before going over your customer's kitchen or giant woodworking project. You're going to want to sand the surface with 220 grit if you're going with matte, or up to 320 grit if going with glossy. Remove any dust using 91% isopropyl and a microfiber rag, and then we're going to remove the lint from the rollers using some masking tape. The lint's going to leave little high spots and boogers on your top coat, and that's not what you want. Before mixing, give the ultimate top coat a good shake in the bottle. If going with natural, the matting agents like to settle, so give it a good shake before you mix. You're looking for an even application when applying the product with your wet roller. Knock down any high points with one final pass, nice and even pressure, then switch over to a dry roller and use light pressure to remove the excess material. I'm using the Ultimate Top Coat on this project because I know the use and abuse that this table is going to get from that fire crew coming back from call after call, sitting around the table, reminiscing, remembering the lives they touch and change, and even save as firefighters. I really like the look of the glossy Ultimate Top Coat over any woodworking project. I always go with that versus the matte, and I'm always pleased that I do that. And be sure to hit the rolled edges, top and bottom. That is a trouble area. If you miss that, you'll come back and it'll be a little bit different. Your eye will catch that. So make sure to hit the top and bottom rolled edge with the roller, and I do that as a final pass. We're gonna let this Ultimate Top Coat cure overnight, and ooh la la, look at that, we're back. It's looking fantastic. You'll be amazed at how the Ultimate Top Coat goes from milky to crystal clear. The lap lines disappear, and I wait about 2 to 3 days before I go and install any project after applying the Ultimate Top Coat. I headed down to Sacramento to the firehouse, and luckily they had a crew on duty to help me move this beast. This thing weighed a lot, and take a gander at that old beaut. These folks definitely deserved an upgrade. They had about 6 or 7 fire calls, medic calls while I was here trying to install their brand new firehouse table, and I was proud to do it for them. These guys are the salt of the earth. Real cool folks. And here she comes, guys. We barely could get it in. Luckily, I brought me some furniture dollies because I did not want to lift it. Check out that base from some metal workers right by my shop. We got her in. We got her leveled. The crew loved it and texted me later that day, eating supper. Man, I got goosebumps remembering this day. Guys, thanks for letting me be a part of your firehouse, delivering this table. Keep up the good work out there. And I hope y'all watching enjoyed the video. You guys can do this too. Just follow along with this video. Don't forget to grab that Slab Jig. That tool really does make quick work out of leveling the most twisted, nastiest woodworking slabs, making you look like a professional woodworker and really dominating that very first river table with Stone Coat Epoxy. Thanks again, everybody, and don't forget, from Stone Coat Countertops, you got this.